It's late autumn, November 18th, 2024. The cold wind sweeps across Ukraine's border near Kursk, Russia. You hear the rumble of engines in the distance. But these aren't ordinary tanks. These are North Korea's newest super tanks, the Chonma-2s. Stylish, heavily armored, armed with 125mm guns, anti-tank missiles, grenade launchers, and machine guns. They roll in, confident, thinking this is just another battlefield. But here's the twist. Ukraine was ready. Every inch of this terrain had been studied, mapped, and trapped. And the moment those North Korean tanks entered, they entered a kill zone, a hidden trap designed to stop even the strongest armored column. It was around 7:30 a.m., November 18th, 2024. The first North Korean armored column crossed into Kursk. Ukrainian drones had spotted them days earlier. The locals didn't know it, but this morning would turn into chaos for Pyongyang's armored pride. Why? Because Ukraine had laid out its plan like a chess master. Mines were hidden under the mud, anti-tank missiles were ready to fire from forests and hills. And snipers? Well, they had perfect sight lines over the roads the tanks would take. North Korea believed it was sending its best troops, the ones trained in Pyongyang, battle-hardened in prior deployments alongside Russia. But reality hit fast. Ukrainian artillery opened up. Tracer rounds cut through the smoky air. Explosions lit the horizon. The tanks, despite all their armor and firepower, were suddenly exposed to precise, deadly attacks. This wasn't just luck. Ukraine's military had set up a kill zone specifically for armored vehicles like the Chonma-2s. They studied satellite images, drone feeds, and even radio chatter from Russia and North Korean forces. Every twist in the road, every grove of trees, and even patches of open field were part of the trap. The kill zone had multiple layers. First, anti-tank mines buried under leaves and dirt. Second, hidden artillery teams ready to strike as soon as the tanks entered. Third, Ukrainian infantry in camouflaged positions with portable anti-tank missiles ready to pick off any stragglers. And it worked. As soon as the North Korean column advanced, explosions erupted along the route. Tanks that cost millions of dollars each were immobilized within minutes. Smoke filled the sky. Engine fire lit the morning sun, and soldiers scrambled for cover. So what exactly did North Korea send into this trap? The column included their Chonma-2 main battle tanks, sometimes called the M2024, along with Russian-supplied T-90 tanks, BTR-80 armored personal carriers, and other armored vehicles, all manned by North Korean crews. This marked the first time Pyongyang deployed both its own tanks and operators to a foreign battlefield. The Chonma-2 represents a huge leap forward from older Soviet-era machines like the T-62 and T-55. It carries a 125mm smoothbore gun capable of firing armor-piercing, high-explosive, and heat rounds. The tank is also armed with two Bullseye 3 anti-tank missiles, a 30mm automatic grenade launcher, and a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun, giving it the ability to fight both enemy armor and infantry effectively. Protection-wise, the Chonma-2 is heavily armored with composite and explosive reactive armor. It also has an active protection system similar to Israel's Iron Fist, designed to intercept incoming projectiles. Advanced electronics, including thermal sights, a panoramic commander scope, a battle management system, and remote-controlled weaponry, allow crews to spot and engage targets faster than older tanks. Mobility is strong too. The 55-ton tank is powered by a 1,200-horsepower diesel engine on a 7-road-wheel chassis, optimized for maneuverability even in rough terrain. Analysts suggest that the Chonma-2 may rival and in some areas surpass Russia's T-90M, though drone-heavy conditions in Ukraine could test its limits. North Korea's deployment didn't stop there. Alongside the Chonmatus, Pyongyang supplied artillery support in the form of their M1989 Koksin long-range howitzers, as well as a variety of anti-tank missiles, portable surface-to-air systems, and other armored vehicles. This combination of tanks, artillery, and troops was meant to bolster Russian forces on the Kursk front, where Moscow had struggled to replace destroyed or outdated armored vehicles. Russian production of new tanks barely reaches 200 units a year, far below Soviet-era levels, forcing reliance on refurbished T-62s and T-55s. In theory, the Chonmatu and its supporting column could dominate the battlefield, but reality told a different story. Despite cutting-edge weaponry, modern armor, and sophisticated electronics, the North Korean forces were funneled straight into Ukraine's prepared ambush. Mines, precision artillery, well-placed missiles, and expertly coordinated Ukrainian tactics neutralized much of their technological advantage. Even these super tanks couldn't escape the trap, showing that no matter how advanced the machinery, positioning, planning, and battlefield awareness can determine the outcome. You might be wondering, how did Ukraine know exactly where to strike? Here's the secret: reconnaissance. Ukrainian teams had been observing the armored column from camouflaged high points. They used infrared cameras to see the heat signatures of tanks moving through the forest. These scouts weren't just looking, they were tracking, mapping, and reporting every movement. As soon as the column entered the kill zone, Ukrainian artillery and anti-tank
Well, there's been much
units
discussion
knew
of Germany's
exactly where to
transfer
fire.
of RGW.
Think about that for a second. These North Korean crews thought they were advancing safely, but a team of observers hidden in plain sight turned their confidence into chaos. Every move the tanks made was predicted, every advance countered. Why did North Korea send its troops and tanks to Ukraine in the first place? The goal was clear: to help Russia push back Ukrainian forces and secure Kursk. About 11,000 North Korean soldiers were sent to fight alongside Russian forces. These troops were disciplined, armed with high-quality ammunition, and in some cases, battle-hardened from prior deployments with Russia. On paper, they seemed like the perfect reinforcement to break Ukrainian defenses and give Moscow a decisive advantage. But North Korea's support went far beyond soldiers and tanks. They sent massive amounts of artillery, rockets, and missiles to Russia over nearly 2 years. Open-source tracking recorded at least 64 shipments from the port of Najin, North Korea, to Russian ports, each carrying hundreds of containers filled with weapons. Analysts estimate that these shipments included millions of artillery shells, KN-23 and KN-24 ballistic missiles, self-propelled artillery, and multi-launch rocket systems. Some of the ballistic missiles reportedly carried warheads up to 1 ton, making them deadlier than many of Russia's own systems. Trains then transported these munitions across thousands of kilometers to depots near Ukraine. Satellite imagery, 3D modeling, and container counts suggest that at times, Russia relied on over 70% of its artillery from North Korean supplies, with some Russian units firing nearly 100% North Korean shells in a single day. This massive logistical effort highlights how dependent Moscow had become on Pyongyang. North Korea's involvement wasn't just a gesture of alliance. It was a strategic lifeline for Russia's artillery-heavy operations. The goal was to sustain Russian units, supply precision firepower, and give the combined forces of Russia and North Korea an upper hand against Ukraine. Yet despite the size, scale, and sophistication of this support, it wasn't enough to guarantee success. Even elite North Korean troops backed by modern Chonmatu tanks and millions of shells ran straight into Ukrainian traps. The tanks were funneled into kill zones where mines, artillery, and missiles waited. By January 2025, roughly 4,000 North Korean soldiers had been killed or wounded, with some captured by Ukrainian forces, giving Kiev rare insight into the inner workings of Kim Jong-un's army. These troops, despite training and discipline, or vulnerable when advancing blindly into prepared defenses. Well, this crushing blow was only the beginning, because Ukraine had already prepared its next move. Early morning, Ukrainian radar spotted something huge moving near the border. Big trucks, tanks, and soldiers, they were coming fast. The command center in Dnipro immediately sprang into action. Alarms blared, lights flashed, and officers shouted. The Kolmes defense plan was activated. Mobile units raced to positions. Every soldier knew something massive was about to happen. This wasn't just another clash. This was a battle with North Korea's elite soldiers and their super-heavy Chonma-2 tanks. Imagine hundreds of tanks moving in a line. Powerful, scary, unstoppable, or so they thought. Some of these tanks have explosive reactive armor that can blow incoming shells away, like a mini explosion protecting the tank. Yet all this armor wouldn't matter if they hit the wrong place, and that's exactly what Ukraine planned. For 14 nights, Ukrainian engineers and soldiers worked like ghosts, quietly turning farmland and village roads into deadly traps. Ordinary fields hid hundreds of pressure mines buried under straw, dirt, and fresh soil, so a single step or the weight of a tank could make them explode. They placed anti-tank obstacles to slow big vehicles and set artillery kill zones that funneled tanks into lanes where guns could hit them easily. Not only this, drones watched from the sky to track every enemy move in real time, while troops waited in nearby forests ready to strike. It was not random. Every meter was planned, and each vehicle path mapped into a deadly funnel. Even the mines and obstacles were made so even the heavy Chonma-2 tanks weighing over 40 tons could be trapped or badly damaged, turning powerful machines into sitting ducks. The North Korean column moved slowly, confidently. Lead vehicles were less than 3 kilometers from the first kill zone. Soldiers inside Chonma-2 tanks probably thought, "We're gonna crush this." Meanwhile, Ukraine's commanders gave one last order: switch the mine system to combat mode. Drone feeds showed each vehicle. Every turn, every stop, every movement was monitored. So could a tank with explosive reactive armor survive a perfectly timed mine explosion? Most people would think yes. But wait, what actually happened next? At just 1 kilometer from the first kill zone, disaster struck. The lead Russian T-90 tank rolled over a hidden pressure mine. Dirt, steel, and smoke erupted into the air. The tank's 20-ton turret lifted off the ground, spinning like a carnival ride, then crashed 30 meters away. Soldiers inside? Screaming, ducking, chaos. That's when Ukraine struck. From the tree line, T-84 Oplot tanks roared forward. Engines growled, tracks tearing into mud. 2 S-22 Bodana howitzers elevated and fired deadly shells. The smoke, fire, and shouts mixed into one terrifying wall. However, some shells fired in this ambush were North Korea's own designs, now being used against their creators' troops. Talk about irony. By the time the rest of the North Korean column reached the kill zone, Ukrainian drones and artillery were already tracking every tank. Mines triggered in sequence. Tanks tried to move, but they were funneled perfectly into crossfire lanes. Once the first explosions erupted, Ukrainian soldiers didn't wait. Infantry units, armored vehicles, and even combat robots joined in. UGVs, small ground robots carrying explosives, rolled into blind spots, taking out enemy infantry and soft targets. Artillery rained down, rockets screaming through the sky. The sound was deafening. Steel on steel, fireballs, metal bending, engines stalling. Soldiers described the air as thick with smoke, dust, and the smell of burnt fuel. One North Korean tank tried to escape the trap, but ended up rolling over another hidden mine, flipping sideways. Crew members had to scramble out, terrified. It was not just combat, it was a death maze. By the end of the first day, the results were catastrophic for the North Koreans. Roughly 4,000 soldiers were killed or wounded, with some captured by Ukraine, including elite Chonma-2 tank crews, of which at least 1,000 perished. Dozens of tanks were destroyed or immobilized in carefully prepared traps. These troops, trained to endure pain and pressure, North Korean troops were still overwhelmed by terrain, strategy, and preparation. Their discipline and advanced armor couldn't save them. Despite millions of shells, missiles, and elite soldiers, tactics and terrain mastery decided the outcome. The cost was massive. North Korean units were decimated. Russian allies suffered heavy losses, while Ukraine endured far fewer casualties thanks to its traps and planning. After the devastating ambush, reactions poured in from around the world. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that North Korea had planned to send soldiers to Ukraine to fight alongside Russia. He criticized Western allies for their slow response, saying it encouraged Russian President Vladimir Putin to continue his terrorist actions. Zelensky added that North Korea had previously supported Russia by supplying 3 million artillery shells and missiles, and that Putin saw North Korean forces as a way to avoid a large-scale mobilization in Russia, which could have threatened his political support. North Korea, for its part, saw this as a chance for its soldiers to gain combat experience in modern warfare. Zelensky also warned that Russia intended to use North Korean labor to address shortages not only in military operations, but also in construction and factories. Ukraine's UN representative, Sergei Kyslytsya, called the involvement of North Korean troops a serious threat to both Europe and the Korean Peninsula. Russia initially rejected the claims, calling reports of North Korean soldiers fake news. Putin later acknowledged the satellite images, saying that if they exist, they reflect something, while blaming the escalation on past U.S.-backed events in 2014. On 26 April 2025, Russia's Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, finally confirmed North Korean involvement, praising the soldiers for professionalism, resilience, and courage in repelling the Ukrainian offensive. The United States also reacted strongly. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expressed concern over North Korea's deployment, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned Pyongyang to expect a tough response for supporting Russia's military, stressing that such actions could have serious consequences. These reactions highlighted the global significance of the battle. Ukraine's careful planning and traps had not only inflicted massive casualties on elite North Korean forces, but also shifted international attention toward the risks of foreign soldiers fighting in the conflict. So North Korean supertanks fell into Ukraine's traps, showing that tactics beat technology. The kill zone was a huge mistake that changed Kursk forever. If North Korea's supertanks could be trapped once, could Ukraine do it again, or even bigger next time? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And if this breakdown gave you a new look into the battle in Kursk, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next Frontline update. Stay alert, stay informed, and see you in the next one.